Okay, this man on the right is Joseph Campbell. He once said, after much research, that 432 was the measure of all things and the most important numerology there was. I'm paraphrasing, and it's not exactly what he said. I could do a whole video on what he talked about, but it's really just a piece of the puzzle again. We're going to try to do a little broader thing here. On the left here, you can see a series of colors going up, much like a flame, hint, hint, and yet at the same time, it swirls and it has a pattern to it. This pattern can be found in nature from the largest to the smallest of all things. In fact, if we start at purple and we think of the entire universe as being purple, then red would be a galaxy, orange would be a solar system, yellow would be our sun, the king of it, coming down declimating in size from it would be a green planet like Venus, a blue planet that we're all familiar with, and then purple again. This can also be represented, and most people don't think of it, musically, in harmony. You hear people that are in music talk about the flavor of something whenever they're playing it, or the color of something whenever they're playing it, and what they're talking about. When I was a kid, I started studying music pretty deeply and started getting into the scales and things like that. And Randy Rhoads had come out, and Eddie Van Halen, and all these things, and they were using these scales and these things that other people didn't, and that turned into neoclassical music. And I ended up getting a tuner for my guitar, and the tuner was set at A at 440 hertz. So you would tune not the top string, duh, but the second one, duh. You would tune it to that sound and that frequency, and then back tune the lower string and up tune the rest of the strings from that. But it also had a harmonica effect, but it only had the sounds that were for that, but it was hooked up for 440 hertz. I also got a tuning fork. In fact, at first I had a tuning fork that got with it and came with a little kit and a keys and everything else, and a tuning fork, and you were supposed to take it and put it on an acoustic guitar because it would resonate, and you could ting and then put it on the acoustic core and hear the sound, and then you would try to match it and match up with that. So at one time I actually did that with the acoustic guitar I had, and I would hit that string and then go to match it. After a short time I realized I could discern A quite well, and I could tell if it was a hair flat to it. Just I could get it tuned to where I thought was about it, and then play something familiar working in A, and it would be like nah, and get it right, from there. But a tuner worked extra. And going back in and getting a set of strings one time, talking to the man that was there, and he was bald and known to play a piano. But here I am with a rock and roll shirt on, growing long hair, and he knows, okay, you've got this and everything going on. For some reason in our conversation, and it got off into neoclassical music slightly, he all of a sudden stopped and went over and got another tuning fork and came to me and he told me, you need this. And printed on it, instead of A440, it said A432. And I was like, what's that? And he goes, well, if you're playing neoclassical music, it's based on classical stuff, and classical people used to use the old scale. And I go, well, what do you mean the old scale? He goes, well, A's 440 now. And I go, well, why did it change? And he goes, I don't know. Somebody said that it was because the music's played just a hair faster, and so over the process of a day you might get an extra song in, but I thought that was stupid. Anyhow, fast forward here about, a couple of years into my crap, and I'm studying it, and of course, on the side, I'm studying all of this other things. And I've got all these album covers and Dark Side of the Moon and Prisms of Pink Floyd going on, and Journey album covers with winged sun disc and all these things going on. and tell you that I found that it surrounded me all the time and it was around me. I saw it in a lot of things, in Easter Island, from Styx album covers and all this. And what is Styx? And Styx is, that's the river, and all, and all of these things. Well, I was sitting there playing one time and started figuring out scales, and of the process of the words in a song, all of a sudden I just spontaneously vomited. It was weird. I was playing along with stuff and everything and thinking about it, and all of a sudden it hit me. I got all dizzy a little bit, and all of a sudden I threw up. I didn't feel bad in any way, shape, or form when this happened. In fact, right after I threw up, like quite often happens to you, I felt like $1,000,000. I didn't, I thought that it was maybe something I ate, but at the same time, this exhilaration, eureka moment that happened really set it off. And it's kind of the only time that's ever happened, but quite often later I ended up having attachments, and somehow I still get a little of that rush every time I find something new and make another attachment. It's gotten so deep now, and the web's gotten so big, that rarely is there something that's an attachment that's incredible. But certain things are, like Göbekli Tepe and so on like that, and certain findings that makes another connection, that makes another connections, and genetics is helping to make very good connections also. But I'm just going way off in left field. But at that moment, I had this epiphany of how this goes with that, and that goes with that, and they used it all, and then what the hell's going on here? Oh my gosh, how did we lose all this crap? And so many things inside of a few seconds ran through my mind. It was incredible, and I started making connections, and it pretty much was like that spider web I tell you, of like, oh my gosh. It's kind of like if you're able to look at the cosmos and see all the constellations, and then somebody started drawing lines all around, and you go, I see what you're doing here. But more than that, it was here, it was there, it was big, it was small, it was in my face, in my pictures on the wall, it was everywhere around me, surrounding me. In fact, I'm playing guitar, and that set it off in the thing, and I'm like, what the hell? And I've tried to share that with you somewhat, but there's always a point whenever you get enough of this information. That's why I always tell you, go back, look at my videos, and da-da-da, and hope you do. Because you get enough of this information in you, and then all of a sudden something clicks, and then you're in the web. But if you'll keep going with it, you'll make more and more connections. Isn't it amazing how symmetrical spider webs are, and how they work off sacred geometry? Figuring off whenever they pinpoint places and how much pressure, and they pull on that little thing, and they know what the hell's going on, like a string, and its tension. Vibrations set off that spider. So we can look at one little thing like a spider and start going way off of it, but looking at this scale that's over here on your left, you might also notice that it looks like a spiral seashell, spiraled up, right? So you see this in the Fibonacci sequence, you see it in this, you see it in that. It's all around us. And you think, okay, so it's all based on nature. And nature works not even just a small little thing here, but bigger things, and in fact the whole cosmos. You could look at this scale here that we just did and work your way through the cosmos on an idea as simple as that. You can use this same scale in an idea whenever you're meditating and go purple. Most people try to attain blue. There's a way to actually be purple all the time. When you look at these numbers that are set up on the sequence, this is 72 is purple. It's a lower note. 108 is red. of fire. 144 is the orange and the blend of 180 and 108. It's a special number. We're going to get into that. But then it goes to 216, which is hardly seen. That strangely fits with the idea of Venus and its peekaboo, and it's hardly seen. It only fits in half the time. Well, yeah, it goes back and forth. There's a yin and yang to this whole thing, too. It's amazing how it all fits together whenever you put it together. So let's look at a simple thing here. So we start with 72 hertz. So I want to show you something as declination is going, where we look at the 12th and how it is at 432 megahertz, or hertz, if you will. This is a frequency. This is how often up and down a string is vibrating. Whenever you hit an A, if you were able to zoom way in, you would see this string vibrating or oscillating, like on an oscilloscope. If you put the same sound through it and tuned it to it, it would make a wave, a sound wave, like a wave on the ocean propelling itself, emanating away at the speed of sound. There is a speed of sound, and it's trapped inside of sacred geometry, but also the speed of light was derived out of using it, and the prism and things like that. And we know about Newton and how that came about, but were there people that knew about it way before? Well, there was the Sumerian tale about a glimmer through what appears to have been glass or a crystal through a window. And if you've ever done this and looked back around the room, there might be some prisms that were there, but it's told in a weird tale, and that tale leads to a beam of sunlight end up making Semiramis and Dumuzi in this idea that comes across as the Jesus that they already had for the Sumerians in their harmony. So when we look at these things, you start at 72 and then 108, but they have a color, they have a shape. For 180, has its own shape. We talked about this recently with all the dice, and how a pyramid is 180, talking about the corresponding angles inside of it, but it itself makes a pyramid. Then you have 360, which is the inside of a square, and it leads all up 547, 2900, 1080, And so how is it based on everything? Well, it's music has a time signature to it too. But not only does music have a time signature to it, but the cadence of the universe, cosmos, solar system, world, year, all is based around this too. It all goes together. It's amazing. But it's amazing what it would have took for people to figure this out unless something was flopped in their hands. Or it goes back much, much farther and was still a culmination, but that doesn't go with modern thinking on the way things went. But we've been revealing that quite a lot of this, such as one thing we've parked on here, was Pythagoras' theorem, and how, well, here it is going on well before Pythagoras everywhere. Is this something that he found while in the library of Alexandria and da-da-da? Well, he found it, put it together. Was that his? Archimedes. Was that a culmination too? So at the 12th level, which is important, 12 based on 6s and 12s, so on, the mathematics of everything, it all breaks down and it's divisible by those, and the things that make up the divisible components of that, 3 and 4. Well, 3 and 4 make 7. Also the sacred 5 makes 12. So you can work off of it that way. And then in music, you have fifths and sevenths, vibrations, tones. We can go over this picture again where it looks like a shell, it looks like the areas of a flame, it looks like the chakra, it looks like everything. Well, you can't put everything into one box. For a box is only one aspect of it. And that's the reason there were so many gods. Because there's all these different things going on. And then you're hooking them up to the way the planets work because they work on these things. And so there's certain people that do certain things. The amazing things is they put it down to story, which ends up being mythology and so on. And you have to pick it back apart, reverse, to get the knowledge back out of it. And there's layers and layers and aspects of that knowledge here. But each one of these, as we look at it, adds up to the sacred 9, God's number. 7 and 2, 72 is 9. 108, add them together, it's 9. 144, very important, 9. 180, well, 1 and 8, 9. 216, yeah. 252, yeah. 288, yeah. 324, yeah. 360, the sacred 360 of the circle, yeah. 3 and 6, and yeah, but it makes a square, and you can square a circle, and square adds up to 360. And what, how is this all working? Hold on, that's just one of the thoughts that ran through my mind as I spontaneously threw up. Let's continue, for I'm not going to try to relevate everything that came in. It's just pieces of stuff I've already shown you over the last 3 years that's come in at the same time as things like this. And I didn't have it all then. I had enough that it freaked me out, though. 396. So in gematria, if you go past 9, 9 and 3 is what? 12? No, it's a 2. So you add them up, and 432. 4 and 3, 7, 8, 9, 2. That's 432. And it continues and it goes up, and there's 540 and all of these numbers. Well, these are harmonic numbers, and people have also noticed that if you put this sound, they take a drum and they cast some sand on a drum, and you play a certain tone, not through the drum, but near it, and it vibrates the drum. It will start to form a pattern that looks like magnetics, and it forms certain shapes too that go along with these ideas in certain hertz. And all our music used to be based on 432. And so it was sacred. And you hear about this, there was a chord that pleased the Lord, and it's supposed to be David with a harp or a lyre, and he's playing these tunes and stuff. You can look back at one of my videos about Kithara, Kithara, and it's before guitar, it's Kithara. But what they did with there was they tuned it to the background music, and they played it in a certain set of scales, and then they would sing over those scales, and they pretty much with their voice became the lead guitar. The one I'm talking about is the Lament of Adonis, I think it's called. And so it's pretty neat, and the guy's doing it in a echo chamber pretty much, and so you could picture him being in a Greek theater and speaking it out. What's amazing about those Greek theaters was they were based on sacred geometry, and you can sit right in them and drop a coin and everybody can hear it well through the stands very well. There are places built like that, and in Persia there's this place where you can go into it and you snap the dollar bill and it echoes back, and it works in perfect timing. So I'm not going to stay on one picture. I'm going to let this go through here. But this flower of life situation is derived from the same echoing. And you'll see pictures of flowers in the very center of that you see in the Sumerians. And you see it in roses and the way a chrysanthemum looks, and homecoming, and this idea of people. And whenever I was a kid, and you had homecoming things into it. And I studied electronics at that time, working with oscilloscopes and waves and things like that. And it was amazing. What that revealed was that, yeah, there's this symbol of life and time too, like the Sumerians, and we work off that Sumerian second that's declamated. And so the Sumerians built this based time and geometry that are showing the wheels of a clock here and how they work. And I'm telling you that ancient clockmakers are very well aware of these ratios that we talk about in sacred geometry, for they have to use them to do everything. In fact, one time looking up the thing on kickbacks of what make the cuckoo go off of it, and well, it runs once per hour divided by 12, and here it is, and what's the ratio that does that? Well, here's this thing that's got 60 spokes on it, and it does, and 5, and 6 times 5, and oh my God. But maybe that's not oh my God, but wow, isn't it amazing? Just the amazement of a watch. I know we have digital watches nowadays, and that's incredible too in its own right, using the same concepts. But if we go back to the watchmakers that did the things in this sacred deal, there's also the sacred watchmaker of time and itself and everything, and it's based off the Sumerian knowledge. And when we have everything declamated in seconds, they knew it. They knew that the declamation of 1 degree falling per day and how much a day was and how it clicked around, but they could break it all the way down to each little second of every day. And there's 86,400 seconds in a day. And that's in there too if you go way up the scale. But also you find that all these things are divisible and they work together. For if you divide it by the sacred 432, you end up with 200. But then there's a night and a day and a yin and yang, and so that's 100 per 12 hours. Or we can break it into 6. And now we start looking at crosses, going across, up and down, on the same clock face that we use today. Broken into quarters, just like a pie. Well, what has pi got to do with this? Rational numbers and everything. Well, it all works together. The mathematics that we use today, along with time and everything, works together in this sacred knowledge of God. It's right there in front of us. That's it. You think about, well, watchmakers in the 1700s, the Antikythera device showed that they had that crap going on a long time before, but before that, it was on paper and mentally, and people were able to mentally do this. They were mentally able to run clocks in their minds, like Stephen Hawking, and just pull it out of thin air. No, they didn't pull it out of thin air. They used mathematics to do it, but it became simple to these guys, and they derived all that we see around us today through this conduit. So it's pretty important. And here you see this guy with this pine cone. And we'll get into that here shortly too. And what that means. Let this clock go. Let that wheel of time move. So these Sumerian gods and the Anunnaki were said to have brought them this sacred knowledge, and they'd probably rather let you talk about sacred geometry than that aspect of that fact they came from heaven and someplace like that. And you see that the moon's diameter is 2,160 miles, and that also fits in the same idea, but it works off the size of the earth in a perfect way too, and a 108 ratio, which again hits that. And so why does a 10-sided dice or a decagon got to do with everything? Because that's 10. Well, if you worked out the thing, that's 1080. It's a variation. You can take the O off the end of that, and that's that 216 we were just talking about. It's there. It's over and over again. Hey, just a weird thought. Somebody said that if you may, it works in nuclear, right? And I talked about that. And they can take this small thing and just take the amount of energy that's in between it and wow, and let that thing loose. And it's a complex atom um, like the flower of life. It's a radioactive multi atom with all these electrons and everything going around it. And all you have to do is disrupt that like a bunch of like a bunch of ping pong balls set up on mouse traps. And if you ever seen this idea of where they explain nuclear, they drop one in there and it goes da 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 da, and it lets it go. And it doesn't take that much. And then you harness it. And in the idea of harnessing that, they got this frequency down and the way that it's going to push and pull, and it works off that too. The charge itself works off that too. All works off these things. Somebody said once, if they took and did the charge right and made the moon as big as they did the atomic bomb, the one that now have become death, destroyer of worlds, said by Oppenheimer, that it would blow out, we'd be gone. But burnt up like a cinder. But it would also blow out the sun like a match and would reach to the core of our galaxy, rip up our arm, and probably destroy our galaxy. If you harnessed it right, go. And I was watching, you know, movies that had stuff about the Genesis probe and the way things worked and all these other things, and of course reading about the Magna Vita and how there were weapons that had happened in ancient times, and the only thing they could have possibly seen that would match up to a nuclear blast was like a meteor strike. And I started studying that a little bit more, and more has come out about things like that happening and causing great events in time. All the dinosaurs had caused such a wreck that all the dinosaurs turned into chickens. I like that statement. On the man in the moon. And is all this just random, or are we caught in the matrix or something, or how does this work? Well, it does feed this matrix idea because everything is mathematical and working on these principles here. And so whenever he talks about a false world and universe and everything, but if somebody's making a false universe, what the hell is running that thing? Isn't that amazing? What drove them to do this? Well, it was eclipses and things like that, and trying to figure it out. And if you look at the videos that I did recently on sacred geometry, they're figuring out eclipses and when it's going to happen, and the world's spinning around and the moon's spinning around. And if they can figure out how that's working together, they can figure out when it's going to do that again. And it doesn't just do it on every odd number Thursdays. Everything's whipping around in this angle, and whenever it does a eclipse, it only does it over a certain part, like passing a golf ball in front of the moon or in front of the earth. But they had to have looked at how long did they look and at the stars and these Chaldean astronomers to realize the wobble of the earth. Many people say, well, it had to go back through 2 cycles before they knew about it. They would have had to gone through at least 2 of these epochs if they were trying to pay attention to discern. It wobbled back. Yeah, we're here again. What's it doing now? It's starting to go. We've got it all tabulated where it did it before. What's it doing now? Well, each one of these is 25,920 years, depending on where you dissect the zodiac and other crap. But funny how that's a sacred number too, and it's all working together. And you think, well, the eclipses and stuff that went on, what's amazing about that, guys, is that Only we've found on Earth that there's this planet that's exactly this size, that covers up the sun just exactly, that does this thing. And so that was kind of a trick on us. But as soon as we figured out the trick, it opened up everything, didn't it? It's amazing what people used to do for eclipses, and with them, it's been used quite a bit. Famously, sometimes. Could go into a few here. So here we have a God imparting knowledge and handing off some knowledge to a sacred priest. And these Anunnaki are supposed to have been taller, and they have these pointy helmets. And we've talked about this a lot, but you look here and there's a dragon that's going on here, and there are sacred houses that look like it's on the Egyptian standpoint for a reason, with little symbols over the top of them, meaning certain things. We realize now that we've gone through different ages. We've talked about how there was this tale of these sacred twins in the first of the Bible, and they're Gemini, and then we're bull worshiping in Taurus, and then at Sinai it changes and it becomes Aries in the time of Arians, and coming through in a renaissance. Why would he call it a renaissance? Well, and it gets through that, and then we get into the age of Pisces, and this is Jesus and the fish and how it works all together. And now we're going back to the age of Aquarius, and this is hooked up with the god Enki here and the Lord of the world, and how it started all over again at this point. So people wonder where you started all at, but the Sumerians declamate that's it, and we're on it again. And something special, something wonderful is supposed to happen. Well, if you look, as we came into that, the 50s and 60s and everything happened, but just on the inkling of that and the release before the cusp, we had the Industrial Revolution, everything happened to that, which seemed it had been on a slow course up until then. But once the culmination came back together, and one more revelation led to another, led to another, led to another, like that bomb. Boom, like the Big Bang, if you'll go with it. And you end up with the same type of situation. What and who are these Anunnaki that came to them? They profess, it's one of those things, guys, that's up on that box about aliens and all these things. Well, I came to the revolution in one of those vomit moments there, that God is an alien, for he's not from around here. He's definitely not. He creates the earth and he does all this thing, and no variation is he from here. So therefore, God is an alien to this world. Isn't that funny? But the Sumerians say the gods came down and they did this to them and everything, and then there's these Anunnaki priests that are carrying on this heritage that a lot of people make connections to the fallen angels coming down and having bread with men and doing these things. Strange stories can come out of that. Strange revelations of how you could still be looking at some people that were half-assed going, and there are people that had a huge amount of snap going on. And they're like, well, what caused that? And they didn't say at that time, we have that snap. They said, the gods have that snap, and that these people were from the gods. It's what they said. It's the way it works out. And if you look at the Bible, if they ate of the fruit, they're supposed to have been as gods of this earth, Lord of this world. Somehow, through thousands of years and coming through the zodiac here, we've ended up coming to where we are like Enki. Enki means Lord of this world. So, sun come up, moon go down, world spin round and round. Well, it continues. It goes, and it goes, and it goes, and it goes. It's the wheel in the sky that keeps turning, small and large. The Sumerians had this lyre harp here, and of course it says 432 Sumerian harp, Woolley found one that looked exactly like this, but there's no idea of what they would have tuned it to. But then again, there are inklings that tell you exactly what they were tuning it to and where they were getting these from. And can really, that Om has a tone to it. And you can tune to that, play a song. You can even have people do the background with their and you play along with it, make up songs. Here's the Sumerian Anunnaki Trinity. Yep, and what's amazing about that is those people are Scythians. That's where they're depicted, and it's even that type of gold work. And this reminds one of the Nebra star disk and things like that that I've shown recently too. And these declamations of dots that are on it and everything. And these are the same damn people helping to do this. But one of them's way over in Germany and hooked up with Stonehenge and these places that are there, Woodhenge. And the other one here is like here. But wait, there's more than that. This is a helmet. And you have Inanna and hooked up to it, and it's a triad, and there's this bird over the top of it, and she's associated with a dove, and there's a spirit. And boy, doesn't this look kind of like some of those stained glass windows of Ye Olde Church, which in German is Kirk. Definitely out of character here, but showing the connections. So if you didn't have all of this, is it going to pull an ad? Hey, that might actually be a funny movie if they don't go all politically correct with it. I'm sure there's going to be a little of that in there. Hopefully they'll make fun of it. And now back to our regular scheduled programming. So how good could you see without all these city lights going on? Have you ever seen the cosmos look so good like that? Well, let's make a couple connections here. Sacred numbers. 12, that's a good one, right? And 2160 that we've talked about, that actually has to do with the diameter of the moon and the earth, whose shadow has a 108 attached to it. And we've looked at that here recently in the other videos, but isn't it funny how 12 times 2160 is 25,920? Is that an arbitrary, weird number? Think about how this is working together, as I've talked about here. What about 60? You know, that Sumerian 60? Let's just take that Sumerian 60 by that incredible 432 that we know about, and music, and and now we have the Song of the Cosmos. What? If you close your eyes and open up your ears and get real silent, pause it, and do this, and you will hear a hiss, a tss, at a pitch. It may be multi-toned, but there will be a pitch that will be held. Hopefully this isn't tinnitus or something like a router near you. Go to another room. Go someplace silent. Put your fingers in your ears, and other than the sound of the ocean, you'll hear this sound, these hertz. It's what frequency your brain's clicking at, believe it or not. Like a computer, and I want a Pentium, zipping along it. It's the capability of the hardware. Then we have a software issue, if you follow me. So isn't that amazing how that one goes together? Well, 360. How about the circumference of the earth, the degrees that everything works off of? Well, they know every 72 years it works off a degree. Wouldn't it be amazing if the 360 degrees circumference we work off of, that works down to the lowest point, sits for 3 days and rises back up and works at the winter solstice, that we hook up to Jesus and the saving of all everything, divided by its degree point, would somehow show exactly the circumference of the whole spinning of the zodiac at 25,920 years. Isn't that special? 180, which here's a triad of sixes, 666, or the pyramid, times a declination of the speed of light, by the way, but also a declination of the planets hooked up to the sun, Ra, and all of that, sun worshippers. Half the circle versus it becomes exactly that, 25,920. So when this zodiac spins around and around and goes through its declinations, there's a lot of things going on. Daytime is one, night is another. When we talk about viewing Saturn as the king of things of nighttime and what he's doing in his 12-year circumference going through the zodiac, people all came up with horoscopes out of this. What's that? Well, that's got to do with Horus and scope and looking forward to the future or the past. And if you can verify it in the past, then you'd say, well, you know what? Looks like there's going to be another eclipse about next Thursday. So tell everybody we're real pissed off and they need to do all these things, ha ha ha, and we're going to shut off the sun. They're going to believe it. These symbols that are used for each one of these two are extremely revealing, and they're showing a wide expanse of their usage in ancient times. Some of them, before they came up with the symbol, are still seen as being discerned or viewed. How many times did the zodiac go around before they figured out the wobble thing? Now, seriously, this 9,020, this is 25,000 years. 26, effectively. They'd have to at least watch it go through one past. And they must have seen it come to an edge of a wobble and come out of it while they were paying attention extremely closely. Right? So in doing so, we have people back here at the dawning of Cro-Magnon man showing this effect. Already having it going on, figuring out that it backs up, and as it's backing up, it goes through this whole situation. Sun come up, moon go down, the world spin round and round. What's going on at night? What's going on during the day when you can't see anything but the sun and a blue sky? Why is the sky blue? I've talked about that in other videos. It's the amount of blue light that's let off by the sun in that long wavelength of light. You can even see it hovering around as the edge of our atmosphere and it glowing in that color. That color has a tone. It's a song of the earth. It's written in the stars. It's written on the planet itself. We couldn't figure out most of this until we figured out the circumference of the earth and the fact that we were on a round earth. And how big was it? And everybody says, oh, we thought it was flat and this, that, and the other. Yeah, it's portrayed as that, and this idea of these four pillars and these concepts, but that's zodiacal. the ancient Sumerians and what they had going on at that time, and what other people picked out of it, and was almost lost at one time and had to be brought back again with another renaissance. Only this time it got going a whole lot better, and we got that car putting up on all four cylinders, and here we're going now. It's amazing what you can do once you got harnessed with something like a horse, and the way it all works together. I've got 2 pages of numbers and correlations right in front of me that we didn't even talk about. But we're ending 45 minutes here. I hate to go to a part 2, so I'm going to put it in another vid, separate from this. Like, enjoy, subscribe. Peace.